this computer.
Hello, everyone. Today's June 13th. It's Saturday. 2020, a lot going on. We want to welcome all our panelists. We want to welcome all our viewers. My name is Mathieu Jean-Pierre. Our co-host is Marielle, Pierrot, founder of I Am Woman's Proverbs, a strong nonprofit working for women and girls in Central Florida. My nonprofit is Galore Urban Tech. We focus on tech education. I want to help bridge the gap in that format, bringing the tech education to where people need it. Our biggest thing is coding. And me and Marielle, we're cousins, and we've been working together to improve both our missions. And right now, the mission is all of our missions, and that is bridging the gap. And our topic today is how can we bridge the gap, especially for our youth. We want to have a conversation talking about the oppression that has been happening for hundreds of years, but especially in our time right now, and how can we find solutions? We have a great panel today. We have a pastor. We have a retired correction officer from Philly. We have a retired police officer from Central Florida. We have a current detective from Brooklyn. We have a mom. We have a mental health worker. I don't know if he's in the room yet. His name is Trey. He'll be here soon. So the whole idea, and of course with our GEMS girls in the rooms, who have been doing the work of being advocates for themselves and for others. So big up to everyone that's here. Thank you for joining us. We're going to kick off the show in this important conversation right now. I want to pass the mic off to Marielle. She's going to share some quick protocols for our virtual meetings.
All right. Thank you, Matt. Again, thank you, everyone. As Matt said, we really appreciate everyone taking the time to be with us this morning to have a conversation. Basically, this forum is to have a conversation about not so much about how we feel, because we all know how we feel about the situation. We all know what happened. So our goal today, as we mentioned earlier, is really to talk about options, a plan. What action plan can we take to bridge the gap between our community leaders, our young people, our churches, and the police department? And so some of the protocols right now that we want to go over, as we all know, we're going to be asking some questions. We have about 15 questions, maybe more, coming in. We may not go through them all today due to time. However, hopefully, if we're not able to go through it, we will hopefully maybe look into a part 2. In the meantime, if you wanna, the questions are gonna be directed to someone specifically, so once we call your name, unmute yourself and answer the question. If someone else wants to add on to the comment or ask a question or respond to the question, there is a raise your hand button. Just make sure you just hit the raise your hand button and we will get to you and allow you to speak. So please continue to mute yourself so that we can keep the noise level and the distractions down. Again, thank you, and we appreciate you being a part of this forum.
Just a quick interjection for our future viewers. We have Facebook technical difficulties, so this is recorded to be shared with you as soon as we're done. So thank you for being patient with us. First off, I'd like to introduce Pastor Gonzalo. Well, no, I'm sorry. I'd like our panel to introduce themselves, and I'm going to start with Pastor Gonzalo. I'm going to unmute you.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Gonzalo. I'm known as Pastor G. It's an honor to be here. I'm planting a church called Encounter Church. It's going to be in Kissimmee. I'm the campus of Johnson University, and it is a multicultural, multilingual, multi-generational congregation, and it's multicultural in everything from the leadership down. And so not just from what you see in the seats, but also in the leadership. And so it's an honor to be here, and it's a really important topic to talk about. And I'm actually excited and blessed and privileged to be here with y'all. And I'm also mourning everything that's going on, man. It's upsetting. And yeah, there's nothing better than to be here with my brothers and sisters and pray on and talk about things that actually come to action.
Thank you, Pastor Gonzalo. Next up, I see Mr. Mike Fisher. Please let us know who you are and what you're about, sir. And you're unmuted.
Okay, good. Thanks for inviting me. Marielle, thanks, and I appreciate the invite. My name is Mike Fisher, and I'm retired from the Osceola County Sheriff's Office as a captain. I retired in 2017. I have close to 30 years of law enforcement here in Osceola County, right here in Central Florida, from the age of 19 until now. I'm currently a candidate for Osceola County Sheriff, and my current job is I run the Security Investigations Program at Universal Studios. Yeah. So there you have it. But thanks for having me, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. We're glad that you're here and bringing your body of work to the table today so we can hash this out. I'd like to introduce Miss Simeone. How are you doing today? Tell us who you are and why you're here.
Hi, thank you. I know Marielle, and so Marielle had asked if I'd be interested in joining the panel. Thank you, Marielle. I'm glad to have the opportunity to be here. My background is in education, so I come at the topic from the perspective of a teacher and a mom. So hopefully I can be helpful in that regard. And then just quickly, I think, everything that has been happening, two things come to mind. It's heartbreaking, but it's also incredibly inspiring. And I feel like it's a wonderful moment seeing everything in our country and around the world. People are impassioned to see justice. So I think that it's a great opportunity for all of us.
Definitely. Thank you so much for joining us, and we can't wait to hear your insight. Thank you. Next, we'd like to introduce, is Carl a panelist? Yes?
That's it.
I'd like to introduce Mr. Carl Valere.
Peace and blessings, everyone. It's an honor to be here with you all, a real blessing. My name is Carl A. Valere. Marielle and Matt basically watched me grow up here in New York, where I live. And like so many other people, I am in mourning. I'm hurting, I'm healing, I'm grieving against the backdrop of a global pandemic that has claimed hundreds of thousands of lives, including family members of my own. We're still dealing with the gripping effects of systemic racism and police brutality in many places in America, and even in economic recession, which compounds the devastation. So I am really honored to be here and to listen to you all and to hear different perspectives. But the ultimate goal is to see a more just and equitable society. So thank you, Marielle, and thank you, Matt, for facilitating this dialogue today.
Thank you for joining us. I don't like that you aged me by saying I watched you grow up, but it's okay. But he's a great young man, and like you said, he's been doing the work, and I'm proud of him. I'm glad that you're with us today. Next up, I'd like to introduce Mr. Fritz Caton, aka Q Doozy. He is a former correction officer from Philly, and I think that's a big piece. Philly's a big inner city. Like big inner cities, we're racked with problems, lack of funding, underfunding, racial tension. So his input, I want to hear what your input is. Here we go.
Good morning, all. It's a pleasure to be with you and to be a part of this wonderful panel and moment. I have over 30 years in law enforcement, from being a shore patrol officer in places like Italy, France, and Spain, to auxiliary police officer in Okinawa, Japan, for about 3 years. For about a year, and to becoming a correctional officer in the city of Philadelphia, PA. As a correctional officer, we are basically the mothers and fathers and social workers and pastors and friend and everything to these inmates. And there I acquired a lot of different experiences, talked to a lot of different people and see a lot of things. So I kind of firsthand understand what the police officers are going through, what the supervisors are going through, police management are going through, and as well, what the Black men and Black youth. So I am pleased to be here with you, and I serve in the in the city of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, for 23 years. Now I'm retired, and I'm a deacon in my church, and I'm happy to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We look forward to your insight and what you have to share with all of us today. Next up, I'd like to introduce Miss Peggy. And one thing before she goes, we want to know what your job is, your title, and Peggy is a mom. And when you think about that simplicity, if we come at things from a simple, basic level first, we can actually get things done. She's a mom. I'm a dad. You're a sister. You're a brother. So these are the conversations we have to have at the basic level, and then move up the command all the way to the White House. So Miss Peggy, the floor is yours. Uh-oh. Can anyone hear her?
We can't hear you.
No, we'll come back to you, Miss Peggy.
While we're waiting for her, we can move with the next person and then come back to her.
I am frozen.
Hello.
Hello, can everyone hear?
Yeah, I got you.
Oh, I'm in.
Matt is muted.
Is it? All right, I'm back. I don't know what happened.
Can everyone hear me now?
Marielle, you might have to keep going if I get stuck.
Yes. Okay.
We
Okay.
can hear you, Peggy. Go ahead.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay. Hi. I know Marielle. We grew up together. So she did ask me to be on this panel, and I heard what you had to say, Matthew. Yes, I am a mom. I'm also a paralegal, so I work in legal everything, and it's an interesting time with things that are coming at me at work, especially with different contracts connected to what's happening at this particular moment. So many things are happening, so many changes. So I look forward to being able to talk to everyone about that. I lost everyone. Am I muted?
We heard you, Peggy.
Oh, okay. I can't. Okay, now I can hear.
Definitely. Thank you. We look forward to your insight and what you're going to share with all of us as well. Next up is our guy from Brooklyn. Vava. You are up. Please introduce yourself, Vava.
Good afternoon, everybody. I know he's calling me Vava, but my name is Val. Valerie. That's my little childhood nickname. So anyway, Matt and Marielle are my cousins, and we grew up together. And right now, we all see it's a tough time to that we're going through right now. I am a New York City detective at the moment of 18 years with the department, and I could tell you right now, I've seen. I've been through a lot with this job and working in Brooklyn and also living in Brooklyn. But right now, since the death of Floyd, I think this is the one time where we have a perfect storm to really have real tangible change in whether it's police reform or whatever you may have, or the relationship between police and the public. This is the time where we should make whatever things are going on happen, especially conversations like this that I've been having throughout this month with my colleagues and anybody else that's willing to ask questions. I'm here to answer. So thank you for having me on the panel, and I'm happy to be here.
Definitely. Thank you for joining us. And like I said, we look forward to your insight and what you have so we can have some positive outcomes in all facets. One more person I'd like to introduce is a gem girl, Miss Denliana. She's going to have a word for us real soon. But I definitely would like for her to introduce herself and tell us why she's here today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Denliana. I am the Vice President and Executive Producer of Gems Girls, which is a non-for-profit organization which encourages young females to become wiser women. And I'm technically going to be speaking about police brutality and what's going on about this pandemic and how I feel about it. So thank you for having me here.
Definitely. Thank you for joining us. The youth, we're here for the youth. You're the youth, you're a leader, and we need all of that, okay? So thank you. One person I'd like to introduce, the last person is Kylie Bear, who's going to be performing our Black National Anthem. Kylie Bear, would you like to say something? You don't have to. She's muted. Oh. And she's waving. All right, Marielle. Oh, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Kylie Bear. I am 9 years old and I am a singer.
She's a singer, she's a dancer, she's an actress. I met her in December at an event, and it was amazing. Me and my kids, and her and her sister and her mom, we all clicked just like that. And I owe that to the spirit inside of her and her energy and tenaciousness. And she's going to grace us with a beautiful song real soon. Thank you, Kylie Bear, for being with us. Right now, Marielle, do you want to add anything before I go to Pastor Gonzalo?
We also have Ivan Codner.
Yes, Brother Alvin.
Hey y'all, how you doing? My name is Alvin A.C. Codner. I am from Kissimmee, Florida. I'm a teacher. I'm a former juvenile justice detention officer. I have 4 degrees, 2 of them including a master's in positive psychology and a master's in nonprofit management and public administration school from FAU. And yeah, I mean, I've been doing a lot for the past 10 years. So in my 20s, I just turned 30. So I've been doing a lot for the youth, and I'm all about youth development and bridging gaps. I'm all about bridging multiple gaps: the age gap, the race gap, the gender gap, all the different gaps that we have that's going on in this world. So I just take my age for the advantage that it's at and try to bridge those, understanding the elderly and understanding the youth as well, and trying to bridge that gap. But yeah, that's what I do.
Awesome, thank you. Aren't you running for office?
Oh yeah, so I'm running for mayor too of the city of Kissimmee. I be forgetting to throw that out there, but yeah, running for mayor of the city of Kissimmee. I got so much else going on, but yeah. So.
We have 2 candidates here today, so break a leg to both of you. I hope you can succeed and keep the work going in that situation. All right, everyone ready? We're gonna have a quick prayer to start our seminar from Pastor Gonzalo. If everyone can make sure you.
All right, let's bow our heads and let's pray. Lord, we come to you today, Lord, and just Lord, we're so grateful for this opportunity, for this privilege, Lord. Lord, we're saddened, we're mourning just everything that's been going on, Lord. But Lord, we pray for your will to be done. Lord, I pray that, Lord, may we seek your will in all that we say, that we do, that we think, and that we feel, Lord. Lord, and I thank you for even bringing us together, Lord, that may we bring about change. May we be part of the change in unity and making a difference in our communities, Lord. Lord, we know that the gospel, that the Great Commission and everything is multicultural, Lord. It is worldwide, Lord. And yet, Lord, we're seeing so much segregation and so much separation, Lord, and when you seek unity for all of us, Lord. And I pray that may we be all as one, Lord. May we continue to push for change, Lord. Wherever there isn't change, that may we push for change, Lord. May we not be ashamed, Lord, of the justice that you seek, of the justice that you are, Lord. And Lord, we thank you for that. We thank you for your love, for your grace, for your mercy, for the joy, for everything that you do, Lord. And we praise you today, Lord. We praise you. We worship you, Lord, and may you be at the center of our conversations, at the center of the table, at the center of this meeting, Lord. And Lord, we pray for those that are hurting, for those that are even being affected right now. We pray for the victims' families, Lord, and Lord, we pray for justice again to make a difference, Lord. Lord, I know that we are better together, Lord. Thank you, Lord. In your mighty name, all of God's people say, Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you for that. Right now, I would like to introduce Kylie Bear, who's going to sing for us the Black National Anthem. Thank you, Kylie Bear. And the floor is yours.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that our past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us, facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won.
Awesome. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. That was short notice, y'all. I hit up this week. Came through. Thank you so much. We needed that. Thank you so much. Kylie Bear, at Kylie Bear 323 on Instagram, y'all. So right now, we're going to have a word from one of our GEMS girls, Miss Denliana. Sorry if I said it wrong.
Denliana, you said it right. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so really about this pandemic and police brutality, I feel like this gotten out of hand. It brought me into tears seeing all these innocent Black people dying because they are getting shot to death. They're getting kneeled on, as for George Floyd. Us Black community shouldn't be scared to walk out on the street, to be accused of our skin color, or to be scared to just walk on a normal day because of this. At this time, it's only right for us to keep spreading no justice, no peace, to keep spreading Black Lives Matter. To keep spreading Black Lives Matter. It's time for us to stand up as a team to make a change, not only for this generation, but for the upcoming future. Thank you.
Thank you. So,
that was beautiful. Go ahead, Marielle, sorry.
Thank you, Deliana, for opening it up. So now the floor is open. As Deliana, as she said, is one of our GEMS girls, which is a mentoring program that we currently operate here in the Osceola County and all of Central Florida, but we're based out of the Osceola County area. And so, as she said, you know, and as I said in the beginning, we, everyone have feelings. Everyone is feeling angry about the situation. And it's unfortunate that it had to take now George Floyd to make a much louder noise about the brutality, about the racism that is going on in our current world. But it's also fortunate, and forgive me if it offends you in any way, but it's also fortunate that it took that situation to occur for us to be able to now really get people to listen to all of our voices. And so today we're not going to talk about how we feel. We're going to talk about what kind of solution, what kind of action can we take to bridge the gap between all of our people in the community with the police department and so on and so forth. So with that being said, this question is open to anyone who would would want to start off with. More specifically, I guess to the moms that we have on the panel, Anna or Miss Peggy. The first question is, should we tell the children? Should we tell them, and how could we tell them? And as we mentioned before, those are among the many questions parents are asking after the death of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor. Many white parents wonder whether to talk with their kids at all, while the parents of color swallow their grief and fear to have the talk once again. So what do you think about this statement? I open the floor up to either Anna or Peggy, who could respond to this question.
Well, I have two girls. The eldest is 24, and the next one is 5 years old. The 5-year-old, she has no idea what's happening with anything. She's just sort of, she loves everybody, whatever, you know. But my 24-year-old, it's interesting to hear her speak about what's happening now, because I am hearing a lot of the young people when they're being interviewed, like on NPR or on CNN or whatever, they're asking them these questions, you know, like, why don't you just like go out and vote? And it was an interesting response that one of them came up with. I'm like, voting has been around forever, like nothing's changed. And I kind of agree with them. As far as what to tell children, I don't know. My 24-year-old, I don't have much to tell her. She's, you know, she's made up her own mind about what's happening right now. My 5-year-old, too young to ask questions. If I did have somebody of age asking me these questions, I'm not sure how I would respond. I know that I feel differently, because I have heard other mothers talk about, well, if you have a Black son, tell him not to put his hands in his pockets and to speak in a certain way. I've never believed in any of that, because I'm thinking none of that matters. But I'm not sure. I wouldn't know how to speak to a child. I would definitely, my husband's an educator. I would ask him, because I don't know what he's telling his students right now, but everybody's home right now. So that's a little tough. I don't know what I would say.
Okay. Anna, would you like to add on to this?
Sure. So regarding the question of like, should we talk to children and students, or like, I guess we can't control whether someone is going to talk to their kids or not. Like, inevitably, parents are going to talk to kids, and kids are very, very perceptive. So at their own level, certainly they're going to be picking up on what's going on. Regarding the specifics, of course, I don't feel like, oh, I know exactly what to say, but from the perspective of an educator, I'm always wanting to kind of go and see how do we get to the root of things. And one of the things that I've been aware of in my own personal development is how I'm creating that relationship that I have with myself, as far as the respect I have for myself, the kindness I have for myself, because from there, when that's able to be developed, I know I'm able to offer that to others. So in regard to kids, I think it would look different at different ages, just because cognitively they're able to, you know, understand at whatever level they're at. But for those young ones, helping them develop, you know, and this is for every single young one, regardless of, you know, race, class, education, background, developing that very strong sense of self, coupled with that understanding that every single individual, every human being has value. You know, no matter who you are, you're not better than anyone else. You know, when we boil things down, essentially there's so much about all of us that makes us the same, even though our eyes mislead us into, you know, thinking there are all these differences. But of course, how things are playing out, things do play out in society based on, what people are seeing and believing. So, just again, looking at how do we take information that changes the way people are thinking and behaving. And I always look at, going and starting with kids and influencing them with language and tools to value, every single person. And I think also I tend to be skewed in the younger because my background is in working with younger kids.
Okay.
Definitely, thank you. Does anyone else, now just open up for everyone else, anyone have any insight on speaking to children, or anyone know a direct resource where maybe parents can get help?
Hello, hello, hello. How's everyone doing? My name is Tanya. I'm a friend of Marielle's.
Hi, Miss Tanya. I didn't see you. Hey.
Yes, baby, here I am. Hey. I just want to answer the question regarding, do we tell the children? I would tell my children. I would tell my grandchildren that are 6, 7, 8. Depending on their level of understanding, I would tell a 4-year-old. And the reason why I would is because from March, they've been out of school. They've had to deal with the pandemic and now a reoccurring epidemic. And when they go back to school, it will be talked about among their peers. Mm-hmm. Some peers are more in their age group, are more aware than others. I would not want my 6-year-old grandson or my 3rd grade granddaughter to go back to school and not understand what is happening. Mm-hmm. I think it would be a great injustice for my children to not have a clear understanding of what is happening. I would hate for them, and I'll take that word back, excuse me. I would not appreciate my grandchildren going back to school and just oblivious to what is happening and not being able to defend, converse, or comprehend what is happening. There's always a way to teach children. It is first my responsibility to teach in the home. I would not place that responsibility on the teachers, on the pastors, on my sisters, my aunts, my uncles. It starts in the home. Now, when they go back to school, if there is an issue, then we deal with the issue. But we do not, let me talk about me, I do not recommend sending my children back to school without a clear understanding. And when I say a clear understanding, it is based on their level of comprehension. Because to tell my child, my grandchildren, a 6-year-old grandchild, about murder and police brutality could be a bit much. But we want to talk about right and we want to talk about wrong. I want to educate them, well educate them, enough where they can actually have a dialogue and maybe even be a leader at 6 years old and say, no, that is not how that is. That's not, and they're going to say, my grandmother didn't say that, or my grandfather didn't say that. What my grandmother said, and I have a 94-year-old grandmother, my grandmother always tells me at the end of every phone call, baby, I want you to remember that love conquers all. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to teach my grandchildren how to effectively converse, deal with other peers, their age, because their peers, some of their peers are going to come back to school raw and ready. And my grandchildren need to be prepared and guarded with love and understanding. And when they come home, because they may come home, especially because they're African American, they may come home hurt and upset. Now we have to deal with that. but they'll know that that was to be expected. So I'm going to teach them, I'm going to educate them based on their level of understanding, but not to have them blindsided when they go back to school. Thank you for letting me share that.
Thank you for sharing. I have a follow-up question with that statement that you've made. But before I do, I have one more. I have Martine Pierrot on the line, and she raised her hand. And you want to respond to that as well?
Hi, everybody. This is Martine, Marielle's sister. Well, I just wanted to. Well, I was agreeing actually with the last speaker. I have a 5-year-old daughter myself, and I do believe it is very important to make sure that your children are knowledgeable about current events. And also it does really depend on their, where they're at cognitively as well. So for my child, I mean, she, even before the pandemic or the riots began, you know, she's introduced the conversation of race and, you know, the differences of people, because the school that she attends, it is very diverse, and she does recognize that, you know, there's different groups of people that go there. She at times would question that and ask me questions.
Oh, we lost Martine.
We lost you, Martine.
And
thank you, Zoom.
Bad connection.
When the protests and the riots began, you know, especially with the pandemic that's going on, you know, there's transition of. Hello?
Yes. Yes. Go ahead.
Hello?
We hear you.
There's a delay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
I'm sorry. Where did I cut? Well, I'm not sure where I got caught off, but what I was gonna say is, so with my child, I did introduce the conversation of, you know, the protesting and what's going on, why it's going on. And at first, you know, within the conversation, you know, she seemed, you know, a little bit frightened and started to cry a little bit, you know, but, you know, I assured her that, you know, while this is happening to Black Americans, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen to our family. So she began to understand. I also, you know, made her aware that it's important to speak, you know, about how you feel and always stand up for what you believe in. And that conversation transitioned to, you know, her wanting to go out there and protest. So I actually took her out to protest, and she got on the mic, and, you know, although she screamed Black Girl Magic, and she made it known that she loves everybody. She doesn't love Donald Trump. But of course, I'm teaching her how to love everyone. But she's aware. And at the end of the day, like I said, it's very important to make your children aware, not only your children, everyone. There's some people that do not watch the news or pay attention to what's really going on or are really that invested. So it's just important to put out that knowledge to everyone at all times.
Definitely, I agree.
I'm sorry, Matt. So a follow-up question would be, because yes.
Pastor Gonzalo has his hand up.
I'm sorry, but I didn't acknowledge Pastor Gonzalez because he could probably answer that along with the next question, because there's along the line of what we're talking about. Because the key thing that I hear is that it depends on the parents, right, to teach their children before they go back into the school and so about racism, about what's going on, about violence, and I get that. So while it is up to the parents, how do we know that the parents are given and providing the correct and the right information is the key thing. So that's the important thing, because as we're talking, and then I'm forming these questions in my head, and I have it here, is what are the available resources that are in our community? Because I see Carl, and I'd like Pastor Gonzalo to speak, and then for Carl Valera to speak as well. What are the available resources that are in our community? And I know we have so many different locations. We have New York here, we have Florida here, we have Connecticut in here as well. I don't know if we have another state here, but how do we find available resources, or how do we ensure that the parents are providing the right information? Because remember, every behavior, and this is speaking from a therapist perspective, every behavior is a learned behavior. And the learned behavior starts from your household. And so it starts at home. Whatever you engage at home, whether it's from your parents, your father, your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, or uncle, whoever is in your household, our children are adopting or taking in learned behavior. So how do we make sure that the right information is being assimilated or disseminated to the parent, that for them, in order for them to provide the correct information to our children? Pastor Gonzalez, and then we'll have Carl Valier to that as well.
Yeah, no, thank you for adding that follow-up question. And so one of the things for it in my context, as far as like in ministry and different things like that, you are right. There needs to be correct information. Like even with the gospel, if you look at the gospel is multicultural. It's worldwide. A lot of people don't even know at times that the gospel entered Africa before there was even a United States of America. And so a lot of times, but when you look at churches and you're trying to reach different cultures, I've had this situation when I was in a different denomination. Now I'm non-denominational, but before, a lot of times I or even other pastor friends of mine would reach people in the old urban context, and that's where I came from. But a lot of times we would start seeing people baptized, African Americans, Hispanics, ex-gang members, ex-drug dealers, ex-prostitutes, all this stuff, homeless people, and then you would have these people that would say like, oh, that was amazing, but can we build them another church, another building? And so that's from a lack, and so that is horrible to hear that. That is ignorant in itself, but yet you hear that continually happening in different churches and different networks. I've heard of a massive speaker that many people love, and he said that Sunday is not the most segregated day of the week. I disagree with that. You look at many churches and it is. So for my children, we have that discussion about discrimination and racism, and even for me, I'm not, obviously, I'm not African American, but nonetheless, we've talked about what the African community is going through. And what does the gospel say? What does the word of God say in support of that, and pushing and supporting that? And so as we've been in the protests, as we've been protesting and different things like that, you learn to talk to your children about what is going on already. But the crazy thing is that I think it was about a week or two ago, I was in Marco Island with a friend, my family and I, and we went through a situation where we were discriminated against. And my children were there. And so imagine when you don't speak to them, or you don't teach them, or you don't give them the right information, and you end up in a situation where you're in that very moment. It's not like you see it coming. It's not like you wake up in the morning and says, hey, I'm going to be discriminated against today. No. And yet we found ourselves at a very beautiful area, a very beautiful place, and we're getting discriminated against in a very horrible way. And my daughter's right there with me, witnessing everything, and she does not know how to respond because she's never experienced this before. And so I think it's one of those things where I agree with Tanya. It's beautiful to talk to our children about it, to pray with them, to cry with them, to hear their questions and their fears, and go through these things with them. As far as in ministry, with our church that we're planting here in Kissimmee, I have a pastor alongside of me. He's African American, and together we reach the community. We have different people in our launch team that are Jamaican and Haitian and different ethnicities, and even Korean. And so that is the example that we have to set as leaders. Sorry about that. That's the example that we have to set as leaders, honestly. But with our children, we have to make sure that they have the right information, because even with the Great Commission and the different gospel, like there's many ethnicities that they're still very racist, and they still believe in the gospel. Right? They believe in the gospel, but for their own ethnicity or something like that. And so there needs to be proper information, proper education given to people, and even a yearning to understand the different history of different cultures. That's when I don't know if many people know, but I've been to federal prison in my old life. Before I was in ministry, I was a gang leader. And when I came out of federal prison, God changed my life. And I remember praying to God when I was just like, God, I would love to start discipling people. And the first person that God ever gave me was that I had as a spiritual son was an African-American kid that I loved, and he became my son. And sadly, he ended up passing away. He ended up drowning at a beach. And we prepared his funeral like my very own son. But bringing him everywhere with me, and he was literally my son. He was with me everywhere we went, and you would see the different treatment that he would get than what I would get. And so there needs to be proper education and proper training, and I look forward to the day that I'm going to see him again. I really do. So that's what we need, and we also need to challenge our leaders and our pastors. So I can finish off right now. Our pastors and leaders to actually talk about this stuff, because it is in the gospel, it is in the Word of God. And how do we talk about this in a way that brings unity and also bringing change into our communities?
Definitely, thank you. Would anybody else like to jump on the topic real quick? Carl?
Yes, thank you. I'll be brief. I've been sharing resources in the chat, everything from a website called socialjusticebooks.org to Instagram pages, Books of Melanin, Black Baby Books. I'd also recommend following Jason Reynolds, who is the National Young People's Ambassador, or National Ambassador for Young People's Literature, who's also a Black man who talks about systemic racism. Sesame Street, for goodness sakes, had a town hall for kids and families where Elmo learned about racism, and his dad, Louis, broke it down for him and said, Elmo, racism is when people are treated unfairly because of how they look, the color of their skin, or where they live, right? And we're not blaming any one person, but we're challenging a system. And I think it's very important to root out the inequities and injustices of systemic racism that filters into so many different spaces. So the other thing before I pass it on is I work for the City of New York and Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. And one of the things that I do is travel across New York City in normal times and talk about mental health, educating the public across communities and corporate spaces. And so one of the things that I like to say is it's never too early to talk with your young people about mental health, right? The same way they understand when they fall or hurt their body part or a knee, they get a boo-boo, they get help, right? When they get a boo-boo and they bleed, maybe you give them a Band-Aid or you clean out the wound, or if they feel sick, they go to the doctor and the doctor treats them and they get better. Similarly, it's important that our young people understand that they have mental well-being, right? If you don't feel good, if you feel angry or scared or sad, we want to honor those feelings in our young people as well. So I don't think that it's too early. I just encourage parents to seek out resources and develop the language to be able to communicate what's happening in the world and in our country so that young people can understand more clearly. Same goes for systemic racism.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to add a comment from one of our Facebook viewers, Miss God's Empress Gabrielle. She says she has the conversations with her 7-year-old daughter about race and how the world defines people. It's important to teach them love early, despite the world's opinions of others. And she said that some parents are filled with anger and frustration and tend to channel it to their children. It's time to start the unlearning process. Thank you for that comment, Miss God's Empress Gabrielle. Marielle?
Thank you. So now we're gonna shift a little bit and move to the, thank you for your responses, by the way. So we're going to shift over to the CEO and the veteran police officer and our current NYPD detective. Now, there's this conversation going around where they talked about defunding the police. So they are, according to an article I was reading, it says that defunding the police doesn't mean zeroing out budget. It means to reduce the demand placed on police and shift funding to mental health care, housing, and other social programs. In the wake of the killing of George Floyd, the Minneapolis City Council voted over the weekend to dismantle its police force, or they call it abolish, is another word. So some of the protesters have said they support the defunding the police, and activists are urging the City Council to reject a proposed increase to the police department and redirect the money to other services. So I want to ask, we can start with Mike Fisher, and then we can move on to Valerie and also to Fritz. Now, do you agree, first off, do you understand and do you agree with the whole defunding or defunding the police force, and what does that mean? And is that a great idea? Is that a bad idea? Or what impact, or how can it affect the community? How can it affect the world, period, if they were to abolish the police department? So we'll start with Mike Fisher, and then with Val.
Sure.
And Fritz.
So I think honestly that because of the entire situation that's come up, there's a lot of emotional knee-jerk reaction to things, and defunding the police is not the answer. We need the police. I mean, there are a lot of things I think that the public doesn't understand that the police do and get involved in. It's not just tickets and arrests. There's a number of things that we do. We work to solve problems. We work to engage in the community. I don't necessarily think defunding the police is an answer. Now, I've seen where Camden, New Jersey has defunded the police there, and they kind of basically did away with their police department. But in reality, they didn't really defund the police. The city stopped funding a police department, and the services were actually turned over to the local sheriff's office. So the sheriff's office came in and actually had a crime plan in place to address things, and had a community engagement plan in place. And since they have done that, the city police department, or the city doesn't fund a police department anymore. It is funded by the county or the Camden, New Jersey area county, however that works. I'm not familiar with that up there specifically, but using that as an example where people have said, well, it worked in Camden because they defunded the police. Well, they didn't really. You still have the police there. I mean, they still do law enforcement activities. I do believe that you need that police work. A lot of people want us to be in law enforcement the answer to everything. And I'll give you a prime example. We get calls to people's houses because their children won't go to sleep. We get calls to people's houses because they can't get their kids in the car to go to school. And so we're faced with a lot of things that officers are faced with a lot of things that, to your point, Marielle, social workers and other things should be involved in there. And you know, do I think that it's an issue that police should go to somebody's house and, you know, try to work with them to help their children? Sure, I think that's viable. But when things happen at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, we get called on all kinds of things, and I don't think that the general public understands a lot of the things that we do. I think we as a police don't educate the public either about the things that we do. One of the girls that I was out talking with today, she wants to be a police officer, and she said, based on her research, she even said, I thought it was just all about tickets and arrests, and there was a lot of things that, you know, that go on that I wasn't aware of. So to me, that was, you know, that was good, and that shows that, you know, that we're doing things. But to answer your question briefly, is I don't think we need to defund the police, and looking at that is not the right answer. I know right now the emotions are high, and that seems like a great idea. But I just couldn't imagine that happening.
No, it's not a good idea. Thank you, Mr. Fisher.
Well, I think Mike Fisher hit every nail on the head. Pretty much I feel the same way he feels. It's definitely not a good idea you can't just say you're gonna have a town or city without police officers. And we do respond. To piggyback off one of the things he said is that we do respond to a lot of things, pretty much everything, right? Anybody you have any type of emergency, whether it's medical, whether it's whatever you may have, you call 911, and 9 times out of 10 the police will get there before EMS or before anything else. So just the other day, I had a case where this guy was pretty much stabbed, and the police got there literally within 30 seconds. And the cops that got there, the guy got stabbed in his thigh and he was bleeding ridiculously. So the cop did a great job. They put a tourniquet, quarantined the bleeding, stopped the bleeding until EMS didn't get there till like at least 3 minutes after the cops got there. So had the cops not get there before at the right time they did, this guy would have died. But unfortunately, the media a lot of times don't report things like that. They only report some of the negativity and the bad things that you see, but they don't really report the good that the police departments do out there. So yeah, so I agree with you on that one, Mike.
Okay. Uncle Fred,
as for me, defunding is a very vague word that different groups and different people take and run with, and sometimes for their own purpose. But the main problem is not funding or defunding the police department. I think it's more about training. I think the police department needs more training. I'm a 6-year Marine veteran. I was trained to kill. So my weapon, every bullet on that weapon had somebody's name on it, which is a target. So we should to kill, and we should to eliminate. Now is that the police department is trained to do the same. And when you are dealing with civilians, it should to stop, not to kill. But I see in so many different instances, they don't stop the several or sometimes 20, 30 bullets to one target, which is ridiculous. That's what we do in the military. So they have to bring some type of training from bottom up, from the recruits to the supervisors, for them to deal with the public a little differently, because you are dealing with human beings, and some of them just have a mental breakdown that cause them to do something that is not rational. And when you come to the scene, your job is really to stop, not to destroy. So I think it's more like the focus should not be on funding or defunding, but it should be on training.
Okay.
That's my take.
Let me, 1 second. Uncle Fritz, I'll have to disagree with you on some parts of your statement. That training is not necessarily training, because when you look at what's happening, you don't see the black cops killing the black guys. You don't see the black cops. When was the last time you saw a report that an unarmed black man was killed by another black man? You don't see that. So it's not just training. My personal experiences with this department after over 18 years, I think that there is a fear of the black community. There is a physical fear of the black man. So I say that meaning we obviously are different in appearance, right? Where you see a white cop, a black cop. But at the end of the day, we have different upbringing. Okay, so what do I mean by that? When you walk down the streets of Brooklyn, right? and it's middle of July, August. It's 100 degrees inside. These neighborhoods, they don't have a lot of these people can't afford AC. They can't afford certain things. So what do? They hang out on the corner. They hang out in front of the building. They barbecue in front of the building. In the suburbs where most of these white cops are coming from, it's opposite. They have a house. They have a backyard. They have AC. They're different. So there is definitely a culture shock where these white police officers are coming into the inner city, and they don't understand what's happening. All they see 10 black guys hanging in the building, having a drink or hanging out. Automatically, oh, they're perps. What they say, they perps. They this, they that. They're breaking the law, and then the interaction goes from 0 to 100 really fast. I personally been in situations where I had to stop and say, listen, this is not what you think is going on. That's not what's going on. It's this, it's that. So the training is not the training. I think it's more of a interaction that needs to understand, like, we act a certain way, and it's hard to explain, but it could be a little bit more than just training. It's the culture shock, I think, a lot of time from the different neighborhoods that are policing our neighborhoods and vice versa.
Okay, we have
Okay, let me clarify myself a little bit. Marielle?
Yes.
Give me 1 second.
Yes.
1 second to clarify myself.
Yes, go ahead.
When I say training, I use the word not without giving details. Part of training, I wasn't talking about training like, the police force, the way they train. That's one thing. The physical training is one thing. The mental training is another. Like the cops, like you said, they take cops, let's say, from far out of Long Island. They are white boys that probably never seen black people but on TV, and they send them to a place like Brooklyn. Okay, that should come with some type of special training. It could be not only physical but mental training to let them know exactly what they are dealing with. But instead of doing that, what they do in the police department in most cases, and with most officers that I interact with, what they do is they send those white cops out to these places where it's mostly black people, and they tell them that these black folks are their enemy. They tell them they are all about drugs. It's the same systematic racism that boils down, that rolls down into the police tactics, like training and tactics. They bring those tactics into the black community, and they, when they come, automatically they already know that they are gonna be met with force, because, to a lot of white people, mentally, the black man is angry. The black man is wild. Look out for them. Those are the type of escalating training that the police departments across the board need. And it's not a black or white thing. It should be uniform to everybody for them to know that they need to deal with the public according to the oath that they took, which is to serve and protect, instead of putting one group against the other. But there are some white people, and I know a lot of them, and even in corrections departments that I work in, there is a division to where the white officers, they think they are superior than the black officers, and when they go into an area that is Hispanic or white, they deal a certain way, and when they go to an all-black area, they deal a certain way. It's mental. It's the mental training that I'm talking about.
Okay, I could agree with you on that.
So, for time's sake, so for the follow-up question, Anna, I let you speak 1 minute. You can go ahead and mute yourself. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'll just be really quickly, just hearing the last two gentlemen speak, a few things came to mind. One thing regarding the training, I'm wondering when, if it's possible for there to be a process where applicants are screened, for example, where they fall on the continuums of being racist to being anti-racist, and where applicants fall on that continuum of being violent to non-violent. And then even beyond that, right, having systems set up where there's accountability, right? So accountability for behavior as well as language, and especially not just those overt behaviors and languages, but the more subtle ones, which I think tend to be more dangerous, but also more telling, you know, body language, comments or lack of comments in certain situations, what is found to be humorous or not humorous, what's paid attention to or what's not paid attention to. So having things in place where people that are applying, they're being held to a much higher standard as far as why are you here and how do you feel about, you know, different groups of people, and monitoring that so that you can actually have them not be able to be on a force or be removed from a force if they're doing things that are harmful and destructive.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
And I see some hands raised up. We'll give you an opportunity to speak. But with a follow-up question along with that, okay, so we talk about training, and they say that someone had said that, because when we talk about defunding the police department, so rather than defunding the police department, why not fund organizations or social services or social workers and so on and so forth? So would it make sense, because someone found it offensive when they said they took our social workers into the police department. So would it make sense, because we're talking about bridging the gap between the police department and the community leaders, right? So would it make sense to bring in mental health providers or social workers into the police department and to be a part of that training to help, rather than the police taking on the full force of de-escalating a situation, but having social workers and mental health providers to be a part of the training with the police department, and also to be a part of the force to help de-escalate a situation. So that's my question for the I guess for Valerie and for Mike, for Mr. Q.
So I'll comment on that. I think it's a good idea, because again, police officers are not trained in social work, so to speak. We're trained to do a lot of different things and wear a lot of different hats, and we're kind of good at everything, but we're not perfect at one thing. So I do agree that that's where when you have an issue with social workers or mental health things, that you have a specialist working there. And again, that goes back to funding. You know, if we had the funding in law enforcement to provide for those positions, you know, as a police administrator, I don't see why you wouldn't want to take that. In the same token, one of the things that I want to do with our homeless community is try to have a homeless outreach team, but in that homeless outreach team, we would want to have a mental health counselor and a social worker to actually work with them closer than what law enforcement can. We're trying to connect them with the proper resources and that type of stuff, and assist the homeless from a law enforcement side of things. But you have to have that other element there, because we're not going to be able to do everything. And I do agree. If you want to take some of the funding, and that term's kind of thrown around loosely, defund the police department. When you think of that, everybody thinks, oh, well, get rid of the police department. I don't think that's the issue. If you're looking at taking funds, as both the other gentlemen said, is, you know, focusing it on training, the proper training, focusing it on hiring the other elements that can help us with these things, with the mental health counselors, social workers, and having them part of the police department or the sheriff's office. You know, I would not be opposed to that. I think that's a good idea. But again, it comes down to funding. And, you know, when you try to look at all the things that a police agency has to fund for safety and the public welfare, that's a great deal of money there that, you know, when you go and ask for these types of things from your commissioners or your city council, and it's denied, that's where you got to look at, okay, what is most important to the task of the police department or the sheriff's office. That's where you spend your money at. And it's just kind of, we're not putting the priorities ahead of what we should be or where we should be with our funding, in short.
Okay.
Definitely.
I see Carl's hand raised. Carl, you wanted to add to that comment or question?
Yeah. No, this is a really great discussion, and there's so much to share, but I'll try to be as brief as I possibly can. I think it's a very necessary conversation for us to talk about the many different ways that we can bridge the gap, and I think it's an appropriate title, right? Bridging the gap can mean so many things. Like, how do we bridge the gap between police and community is one facet, but even talking about how do we bridge the gap between the community and people who are incarcerated, right? How do we bridge the gap between people in the community and folks who are homeless? I think police officers ought to be a part of the community. And so I think we need to examine, why is there a gap, right? Like, when we talk about the history of the United States, it is a history of white supremacy, right? And I say that as a city employee. I say that as someone who works for the department that has benefited from, as many institutions have, white supremacy. And so I think it's an interesting conversation. There are folks who are interested in, there are some people who don't believe anything needs to be changed about the police, right? They're doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. There are other to their credit, academics, scholars, researchers, organizers, nonprofit organizations who are doing the research and who are strategizing for the strategic and coordinated divestment of funds away from perhaps a police department and into resources like mental health or education or summer youth programs or economic development. That's a legitimate argument, I think. And then there are others who believe that the police need to be abolished entirely, right? So where do you fall along that spectrum? I'm not expecting police officers to say that they support themselves being out of a job. No one would say, I want to lose my job, right? And so I think it's important to be realistic about that. However, here in New York City, there are a few examples, to Marielle's point, about mental health support being a necessary and vital resource in the community. There's assertive community treatment teams. There are assisted outpatient treatment coordination. A lot of people come from all around the country to receive mental health support in New York City. I've trained NYPD officers. I've trained at the Department of Homeland Security, where federal officers, with Customs and Border Protection will say, like, yeah, we don't have the mental health training and we don't want to get involved with community members who might experience mental illness or be in distress. And so how do we involve the mental health professionals, the social workers? How do we involve peer support specialists? And I think, to the credit of those, my final point, who are talking about defunding or divestment of funds, right? I think here in New York City, there's a $6 billion budget for the NYPD, but there's been a steady series of cuts to after-school programs, summer school programs, or summer
youth
education, right? So all of these things, I think, are legitimate. However, I think the point really is, how can we make sure that the community is very much at the table when we're having these discussions? I also think there's speaking of the gap, there's an information gap. A lot of people aren't necessarily using research as the basis for their argument, but there's also an imagination gap. If we imagine, next week we'll be celebrating June 19th, which was when Black folks finally got word about the Emancipation Proclamation in 1865. There were people in 65 who believed that abolishing slavery was ridiculous, right? And I think it's important that we're able to imagine a different world. I'm not suggesting a world that puts people out of their jobs, but I think it's important to stretch our imaginations to examine what can be possible. And I think the young people especially have really vivid imaginations about how we can create a more just and equitable society.
Definitely. Thank you.
Can I add something?
Oh, go ahead.
Can I add something to what he said? And I do agree that we do need to, like you said, the mental health aspect, and when I look at it though, the comment you made about police officers don't want to lose their job. The question is, how do we get those mental health counselors working 24/7? When you look at a police officer, that the reason we're called to most of these incidences is because we're the only ones working at that time. When somebody's in crisis, it usually isn't Monday through Friday 8 to 5 when office hours are. So when you look at these mental health professionals, or trying to get mental health professionals and social workers involved in law enforcement, they have to be in a capacity where they work 24/7. And I just don't think we could find that, and I think using the money to do that would be great. But to say that defunding the police and law enforcement is afraid of losing their job, I don't necessarily think that. We're the only ones there 24/7 that would actually do that job. So when we look at social workers and we look at involving mental health people in law enforcement, we literally have to embed them in law enforcement. We can't just say, well, they're available and they're available on Thursday between 2 to 6, because this is not going to work. I mean, when you need them now. So that's why I say it will be hard to get to that point unless we get some kind of overall consensus from people that these are the types of people that we need working in this industry during a 24/7, 365 day a week shift schedule. And it's it's much like nurses and doctors. They're there constantly, and you always have that. We're same with law enforcement. We're there 24/7. I just want to add that comment. I think it's a good idea to have that. You got to realize why we don't have that now, and I just don't think you'll have the money there to do that 24/7.
So if I could add to that, just hearing you talk made me think when I was in college, I volunteered for a rape crisis hotline, which was volunteer. So you had training. So when it comes to mental health workers or social workers, it certainly is possible that we could create systems where we have those, just like you said, a doctor is on call, where people that are in the mental health field are on call during those times. So maybe those are things that can be incorporated, and the police department can be working in conjunction, whether, sometimes I go out in the middle of the night to meet somebody at the hospital. So I think, certainly there are probably people that are willing, that are in those fields to be part of that type of work, whether it's they're volunteering or being paid.
Definitely. Thank you. I wanted to.
If I may.
Who's that?
If I may.
Yes.
Fritz. Okay. It's almost impossible for every police officer that makes an arrest to have that person seen by a healthcare or mental health care administrator or doctor. It's almost impossible, because you would have to have someone there at each and every police department 24/7. So you cannot have that, because when an arrest is made, the person being arrested is presumably innocent until proven guilty. So therefore, what they do is they process the person to county jail. So what the city, which I work for City of Philadelphia. I cannot speak for. Once an arrest is made from the street, they take that individual to the roundhouse, and the person will or will not see a judge at that point, but they will determine whether that person stays there until they see a judge, or a judge will be called to determine whether this person should be released or held, to go through the process to either be charged or not. At that point, they would send this person to a county jail. Once the person gets into the county jail, a few things happen. Automatically, that person is processed and placed in quarantine. And with that, the person has to be within 72 hours. This person has to be medically cleared. The person has to be have to see a social worker. The person has to see a mental health administrator. So those things are taking place once they get into the prison system, not from the street or from the police department, because you have so many different departments. They would not have enough funds to hire a nurse, mental health professional, and all the other things that they need. So they have all these things at the county jail level, and that person will be cleared, and that's when they go into population. Until then, they are to stay into their cells until they are cleared. They check for diseases, they check for everything, mental health and all. So that's when they get their treatment. So the problem is not really the police officers on the street arresting people. The problem is how the arrest was made, what kind of force was used, what kind of biases was implemented in that arrest, what kind of false report was written. It boils down to the police officer that arrests that person. If it was done right, then that person will be okay until they get to see a judge. But if it was done with intentions of racism or bias, that's where the problem lies, but not really to have a healthcare professional or mental health professional on each and every police department. Hopefully I'm clear.
Thank you. Marielle?
Yes. Thank you.
All right, T, thank you. Oh my God, I so much information. Go ahead, Marielle.
It's a lot of information, and also Carl hit it right in point too. It's so much information. It's so much
to do.
It's a lot of, there's a lot of work that we need to do in the community together, and that's speaking from the perspective of the police department, the churches, the schools, the parents, social workers, mental health providers, youth programs. So there's a lot of programs. I mean, there's a lot of work that we need to do together, and I don't believe that there's one organization who can accomplish all of that on its own. So I'm gonna, we have a lot of questions, and we did say in the beginning we're not gonna be able to complete all of them, but I do believe that we need to have a continuous conversation about what we're having, and I would love to be able to have a part two, to be able to continue this conversation, because the bottom line is, now that we talked about not about our feelings. Thank you for not talking about your feeling, but talking about the issue at hand and what it is that we need to do. And I think now we need to come together and talk about what is the action step, what's the action plan? What kind of action plan can we put together. So I'm going to ask one last question, and I want to ask Mr. Ivan Cotton, because I haven't heard him speak, and he's doing his outlet behind the during the session, and I'm going to open this to him and everyone that can chime into this, and then after this last question, we're going to close this event because it was supposed to be 1 hour, but this conversation is so much needed and it's so much required, and we're going to continue this segment. And if you guys are on board with doing a part 2, raise your hand and say yes, we're on board to do a part 2. All right, and so we can plan one so that we can continue that process. But I'd like to ask this question: how can we build a trust and positive engagement between the police department and the community leaders? How can we build it? Because that question really leads on to action plan. What are the action plan? What are the steps? So how can we build, but in order to do that, we need to be able to build some type of trust and a positive engagement between the department as well as the community leaders and the people of the community.
Real quick, one of our Facebook viewers, Ms. God's Empress Gabrielle, says she's down for another meeting, just so you know, guys.
Thank you.
So yeah, I think that's always been needed. I think it all consists of partnering. Partnership is a key thing. It also consists of the sheriff and the chief allowing to partner with certain nonprofits, the sheriff, the chief, and the warden. I think those are 3 main people that need to actually be welcome, be visible out in the community, and be able to reach out to those community leaders, nonprofit CEOs, leaders, and stuff like that to go ahead and say, okay, what your services can provide. So, for example, I'm not even too sure how much. There's no financial literacy programs for the inmates that's in the Osceola County, right? So if we had a nonprofit that would go ahead and provide that financial literacy to those inmates that are in jail, when they come out, they won't be going back to the same crime that they were doing prior to when they got in there. Because now, usually a lot of times when people are robbing or thieving, it's because they lack a resource. So if we're able to go into the jail, any nonprofit or any type of organization, just volunteer or not, able to go into jail and try to teach those inmates on how to get out, find a job, provide them the information, resources of what companies do hire felons and etc. Then it'll be they can break that cycle. So that's one thing, kind of bridging that gap, as well as when it comes to like the policing aspect and police brutality. Like I said, it really involves the chief and other police officers literally going into the community and trying to figure out things and being visible, because a lot of times we only those in the minority communities, they only see the police when it's a crime that happened or something or it's an issue, but they don't see the police sometimes on a good aspect, on a good situation. So it takes that partnership between not only us as the community, us as people, letting our, not to say let our guards down, but reaching up over the aisle per se, and saying, hey, we're willing to work with you if you're willing to work with us. And it's the same as the police officers and the chiefs and the sheriffs being willing to go into the community, not on a job, not because they're stationed there, but actually just going, knocking on doors, saying, hey, how you doing? What's your top issues? What's your top concerns? And being able to build that relationship. So it's all about building that rapport. So I think that, firstly, I think anyone who has a nonprofit organization or knows any organization that is willing to offer services to partner with the police department, that's the first route, and kind of building that contact and being a subcommittee or a sub program with the police department. I think that's the key thing, and we're working hand in hand with each other, and we all have one mission, one goal. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Martin said, until justice is served and reform is made, the confidence will not be there.
She said what now?
Martin made a comment and she says, until justice is served and reform is made, the confidence will not be there.
Whoa. Until justice is served and reform is made, the confidence within us or the confidence within? sheriff or the government.
Confidence in government, confidence in the police
Oh,
department.
that's what you're saying. Well, I mean, you know, and that's also, you know, a perspective thing, via perspective, right? So if you personally had been disrespected by the police, you're personally gonna dislike the police on a personal level. Therefore, you may have that kind of barrier, you know. But you got to be able to be willing to just go ahead and, even though of course it's upsetting, but you got to forgive. Like Lord, you know, the Lord always tells us to forgive. So it's like you got to be able to forgive and then figure out a new way. Because hating the police and hating everyone as a whole, they're all not the same. I know a lot of police officers that are good friends of mine, and I also have my same situation with police officers from the same departments who disrespected me, who profiled me, and etc. So I get both ends, I get both sides, but you do have to figure out a way to find that middle ground. So I get that. I'm all for justice. I'm all for reform, and that's what I do. Why I do what I do. But when it comes to those, when I see a lot of my other friends, and they're good friends of mine that are just super pro-black, they're all about like taking the Black Panther route. They're all about defunding the police and all that stuff. They can do whatever they think, rightfully so. But I personally don't think that's the route things change, because I know actually how policies and city ordinances and county ordinances and city laws change. So you can do all that, but there's a certain amount of people that actually can make those changes. And if you don't strategically, present something to them to persuade them to change that law, there'll never be a true reform. So I know the route that I'm taking, that's the way I know I'm going to change those ordinances.
Valerie?
Let me just tack on a little bit more, and I know you guys will have to go soon. We're talking about bridging a gap. So you can't talk about a bridge without saying that the bridge starts from both sides, right? So for the last hour or so, we've been talking about what the police are doing wrong. So I can honestly, personally tell you that that's why I commend you, Marielle, and I commend you, Matt, for engaging the young people, to creating, getting them involved, getting them talking. I couldn't tell you how many community meetings that I've been to with the police department in New York, where there's only 5 people there. And the 5 people that's there, they're 60, 70, 80 years old, who are really not in the streets. So you don't see the 19-year-old, you don't see the 20-year-olds that are in the street. You don't see them at these meetings. They don't engage. So part of the fix of the problem is not just the police training, the police this, the police that. We have to engage our young people to be vocal, to go to these meetings, because we are having these meetings out there. We are having in the summertime, we have these barbecues in the parks. We have police DJs and all types of things that are happening, but there's nobody there. So that's one problem. We got to engage the young community to come to the precinct, to talk to the police, to this, to that, and that. And second, in order to affect real change in the police department, the New York City Police Department is probably the most diverse police department in the nation. I believe last I checked, we about 56 to 58% were white officers, and the other 40-something is all minorities. Out of the minorities, 23% are Black officers. To me, that's not enough. We really want the change that's going to happen in the police departments around the nation is not coming from outside. It's not going to come from anybody on this panel, not myself, not anybody. It's going to come collectively from within. So we have to engage our young people to become cops, to be more proactive and want to be police officers, and change those percentage where it's 50-50 across the board, where we have 50% of minorities and 50% or whatever. And until that number starts to change, where this police force becomes attractive to our young kids, to our children, there's really not going to be, it's going to be, we talk, and tomorrow is going to be the same nonsense. So we need to engage these kids, make them want to be police officers, because the more, like I said before, personally, I've been in a situation where I know if I wasn't there, it could have gone it could have went differently. And where I stepped in and then things all smoothed. And I've seen situation where when I come into the scene or people see another Black officer in the scene, the sign of relief on their face, stuff like that. So we got to get our young people to want to be police officers. The change has to come from inside out, not outside in.
Just quickly, if I could quickly just add regarding the trust and the confidence in police officers. I think it's also really important to consider our mindset. If our mindset is like they're all bad or they don't get it or they're not supporting us, we end up perpetuating that. So our willingness to believe change is possible, I think, is key. Knowing also that there are police officers that want change, and adjusting our own mindset to find out, actively find out who are those officers that are supporting the things that we want to see, and how do we get behind them and support them even more. Because each one of us, when we get together with the people that are like-minded, collectively, that's how we're going to make change. So I think also, getting specific and getting into departments and finding out who's doing the work that we want to do and how do we support those individuals.
Okay. And Pastor G?
May I?
Yeah, I'm right here. Yeah, and so one of the things with that is I agree with Val and with my sister here, but the thing I wanted to say is I remember when I came out of federal prison, and like I shared earlier, I'm an ex-gang leader, and before I got out of federal prison back into my hood where I used to be at, they were all flipping out. They were freaking out because he's coming back into town, what's gonna happen, different things like that. They were hearing rumors about me in federal prison that I had came to the faith, all that stuff. But I remember when I came out, a lot of people were on edge, and even my old gang, where they had a new leader in place and everything. He was scared. He was like, "Yo, are you gonna challenge me for my spot? What's gonna happen?" And I had to explain to a lot of people, like, "Nah, I'm really in the faith now." And they were like, "Oh, that wears off after 6 months." That's what they would tell me. And so, but one of the things is though that it took a police officer. It took the captain of the police department to come to one of the churches that I was speaking at. He heard I was speaking at a church, and he showed up to the church, and he was plain dress clothes. He was just plain. But when you in that old lifestyle, you can sometimes, like they say, you can smell an officer, or you can feel an undercover or something. He was there, and I knew he was a law enforcement officer, but he presented himself politely and everything, and he says, I want to talk to you after your speech and your message. And I said, sure, man. And I was scared because I'm on federal probation, everything. And so I started talking to him, and he's like, he says, I don't know if you really changed. There's a lot of talk in the police department. He says, but I believe in you, man. And if you really want to make change, I would love to work with you together, that we can make a difference in the community. And he meant it, man. Like, as soon as that, we started walking together. We would meet for coffee. We would pray together. Like it was the craziest thing. Like, you have an ex-gang leader meeting for coffee with a captain of the police department, And we would meet. We would pray. We would have coffee, and then we would start talking about a lot of the high-risk youth, the wannabe gang members, and the people and the at-risk youth joining the gangs and different things. And so we started talking about building a program. And he's like, hey, we got money for a program. And he says, Pastor G, he didn't call me Pastor G back then. And so he's like, can you help me with this? And I said, I would love to. I don't know how, but we'll figure it out. And so we started an at-risk program there, and it's hugely successful today. And they're still doing it. And this is in West Michigan. They're still running it today. And then we started doing a reentry program. We started doing different things together that we started learning and working together on. And so I do agree that the bridge has to come from both sides, and there has to be work, and there has to be unity. And even going with the first question about how do we talk to our children, like I believe that we start building our children at a young age, saying like, yes, this is the evil that's going on right now. This is a reality, but this is what we're called to do and how we bring change. That our children can become leaders, that they can be politicians that are not cold-blooded politician snakes, but they're people that are bringing about change, people that can become attorneys, people that can become police officers and judges and different things like that. I believe that if we start talking to our children correctly and giving them the right information, man, and bringing about and holding our leaders accountable today and not get them out of office, I truly believe that it has to be both ways. And in the midst of that, praying for unity as we pray for action and making these differences.
Yes, thank you. So one thing I would just want to throw out there real quick, I have our challenge for us as we leave today's meeting. I challenge everyone, because we're in different cities right now. I challenge everyone to look around your local area, and I need you to share to Marielle's page or my page, Mattpreneur, your local PAL or your local YMCA. Let's start putting our list together. We can start this, all right? So I'm challenging everyone, by the end of tomorrow night, 9 p.m., I need to see some locations of your local YMCA, your local PAL. And for me in Queens, we have community affairs officers. I'm going to list who they are for the 2 closest precincts next to me, and that's how I know we can start and keep the conversation going. Let's connect those bridges, right? Marielle?
What's a PAL?
Police Athletic League.
Okay.
So those are nonprofits. They're after-school programs, out-of-school programs. For instance, in South Jamaica, Queens, there was a young boy killed in November. Immediately within a month, the PAL that is right there where he lives, they opened up on Saturday and Sundays again. Can you imagine if the opportunity was there to be in there on a Saturday or Sunday? That boy would not have died at 14 years old on a Saturday night. So part of the change is we have things out there. Whoever's here today, let's be about it. Let's get those lists going, and that's how we're going to start the work.
That's right.
I want to end us with a quote before we even say goodbye. It says, "I'm for truth, no matter who tells it. I'm for justice, no matter who it is for or against. I'm a human being first and foremost. And as such, I'm for whoever and whatever benefits humanity as a whole." And that's a quote from the great Malcolm X. I want to thank everybody for being here today. We do have to end. We got through 2 questions out of 14, and that means that this is amazing. It means the conversation will and must continue, and we should do this again within 30 days, maybe 4 Saturdays from now. I want to thank all our panelists. I want to thank all our guests, all our viewers on Facebook that had questions. On Facebook, they want us to have this conversation again, part 2. So let's make sure we keep doing that. Everyone remember what was said here today. Remember your feelings in this moment, like Marielle. So what's the feelings right now that we can do something? Because right now it's not talking, it's doing, right? So we all came here to do something. So let's do it. We're going to meet up again. I'm honored to be in the room with every single person that was here. We have little kids up in here all the way up to grown folks, right? And that means that we're all part of the conversation. That means we all can change the conversation, and we all have to look better forward to a better tomorrow. With that, I'm going to pass the floor to Marielle.
Mathieu, you pretty much wrap it up, really. And again, thank you all. It is an honor. It is a privilege. Although a lot of you know me from a personal level, but really from a professional level, I really commend you guys for what you're doing now, what you have already been doing, and we just need to keep pushing. And you know, in addition to what Mathieu is saying, we're challenging you, each one of you, to look around in your community to join a task force. If there's not a task force, start one up, or find someone who can start a task force. I know everybody's busy, everybody have things that's going on, but if we are talking about a change, we need to be about change. So we are challenging you. Even within your job, you know, start a task force with your job.
Right, be the change you want to see. Exactly.
You know, or even at home. You know what I mean? So we're challenging you to do that, and we definitely would love to come back and have another segment of this. We'll go ahead and plan it and invite you all to participate. And again, thank you. It's an honor. It's a privilege. May God bless you all. And may God continue to keep you all safe. Thank you, and you have a great day, guys. Woo, woo, woo.
Great day. Wear your mask. Be socially distanced if you're in one of those states.
Social distance.
That's right.
Thank you, everyone. It's a great meeting.
It was a pleasure to meet everybody. Thank you for all the insight. Be safe. Love you all. Take
Wait,
care.
one more thing.
Thank you, Carl. Baby Carl right there.
One more thing. I definitely want to say this part. Thank you to our law enforcement that are in the group, whether you're retired or not, running for office. Thank you, because the work you do, there's no thank yous most of the time, right? So thank you. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you to our guests who are on there who were not a part of the panel, but they became a part of the panel. We thank you for your input. We thank you for your feedback. Please join us again the next time. And again, to you guys as well, make sure that you check into your local
PAL,
yes, and try to create a task force, you know, and try to be about that change. All right?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Hey, Peggy.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Good to see you.
It's good to see
Va.
you.
Yes. What's up, Monk?
What's up, man?
All right. We'll catch you guys later.
I see the hair, boy. I see the hair. All right, take care.
Later.
Bye.
Wonderful.
Everybody here. Yeah. Mata,
Fifi, my darling, how are you?
I got fed.
She's muted. Unmute her.
I did.
Yeah, unmuted.
Hi, Fifi.
Hi, baby.
How are you?
All right.
Say name Solomon where we there we go. Kunyamwo.
Yeah.
How's everything? You good?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
Matt, good job, man. Matthew.
Thank you for
Great
being
job.
there.
Okay.
Great job.
All right, now what tomorrow?
I'm so proud of you guys, man.
We try.
Hi, sweetie. Yeah, I'm so proud of you. Good job.
It's our job, man. You guys came here with a mission. We got to make sure that the mission